My daughter Vanessa gave her father-in-law Patrick a brand new Tesla Model S Plaid. $137,000 worth of chrome and leather, presented with a brilliant smile at his 65th birthday party. 8 days later, she showed up at my door for my 64th birthday with a $22 bottle of Suave shampoo. "Dad, you don't deserve more than that," she said, her diamond earrings catching the sunlight like little knives. 3 weeks later, she called me 21 times in 2 days. "Dad, please, stop. You're ruining everything." But I couldn't stop. Not after what I'd found. Not after what she'd done. But 2 weeks earlier, everything had started without malice. The party was at Patrick Henderson's estate in Lexington, the kind of place where the circular driveway could park 20 cars without anyone feeling cramped. White linen tablecloths covered tables arranged across the back lawn, each one decorated with centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. The catering staff moved between guests with silver trays, offering hors d'oeuvres I couldn't name. I'd arrived early in my Ford F-150, the same truck I'd driven for 14 years, parking it at the far end near the service entrance where it wouldn't stand out. Vanessa and Trevor arrived fashionably late in their black BMW M5. The engine purred as they pulled up to the main entrance. Vanessa stepped out first, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably came from some boutique downtown, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist. Trevor followed, checking his Rolex as he straightened his navy blazer. They moved through the crowd like sharks through water, all smiles and air kisses, working their way toward Patrick. I watched from near the dessert table. The cake was 3 tiers of vanilla and raspberry, decorated with gold leaf. 65 candles would go on top later, one for each year of Patrick's life plus one to grow on. The caterers had placed it on a separate table under a white tent, protecting it from the afternoon sun. I'd brought Patrick a gift too, a leather-bound first edition of The Old Man and the Sea that had cost me $340 at a rare bookshop. It sat on the gift table, wrapped in brown paper, modest next to the other presents. Patrick stood near the pool holding court. He was a big man, 6'3" with silver hair and the kind of tan that came from golf courses and yacht clubs. His linen shirt probably cost more than my entire outfit. People clustered around him, laughing at his stories about closing business deals and summer trips to Martha's Vineyard. He'd built Henderson Construction from the ground up 30 years ago, turned it into a regional powerhouse worth millions. Now he spent most of his time on boards and advisory committees, letting others run the day-to-day operations. Vanessa reached him first. She kissed his cheek, her hand resting on his arm with practiced familiarity. Trevor shook Patrick's hand, that firm grip businessmen use to establish dominance. They talked for a moment, Vanessa laughing at something Patrick said, her head tilted back to show her throat. Then Trevor raised his hand, and the crowd quieted. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for just a moment." The conversations died down. Heads turned. I set down my sparkling water, the bubbles still rising in the plastic cup. Something in Trevor's tone made my shoulders tense. He had that look he got when closing a business deal, confident and calculating. "Patrick, we wanted to do something special for your 65th birthday." Trevor's voice carried across the lawn. "You've been an incredible father-in-law, a mentor, and a friend. You've taught me so much about business, about life, about what it means to build something that lasts." Vanessa moved closer to Patrick. Her hand found his again, squeezing it. The sunlight caught her diamond earrings, sending little sparks of light across the grass. She looked at Trevor, then back at Patrick, her smile growing wider. "Daddy-in-law, you deserve the best," she said. "So we got you the best." Trevor gestured toward the driveway. A delivery driver appeared, walking up the stone path. Behind him, 2 men in matching polo shirts drove a car around the circular drive. It was a Tesla Model S Plaid, black as midnight, the paint so glossy it looked wet. The electric motors were silent, making its arrival almost ghostly. Sunlight reflected off the chrome trim and the distinctive Tesla badge on the front. The car stopped perfectly aligned with the main entrance. The crowd gasped. Patrick's mouth fell open. He stepped forward, his hands coming up to his face. People surged toward the Tesla, their voices rising in excited chatter. The delivery driver held out a key fob on a small presentation pillow, red velvet with gold trim. Fully loaded, Trevor announced, his voice carrying pride like a flag. Every option. Ludicrous mode. Range of 370 miles. 0 to 60 in 1.99 seconds. Only the finest for Dad. He clapped Patrick's shoulder. Vanessa beamed beside him, her arm linked through Patrick's as he walked toward the car. The guests followed like a wave, their champagne glasses forgotten on tables. Camera phones appeared, flashes going off. Patrick ran his hand along the Tesla's hood, shaking his head in disbelief. I stood by the dessert table. The distance between me and that car felt like miles. My khakis suddenly seemed cheaper, my button-down shirt more worn. I'd ironed it that morning, making sure the collar was crisp, the sleeves properly creased. Now it felt like tissue paper compared to the silk and linen surrounding me. Vanessa turned back toward the crowd. Her eyes found mine across the lawn. For a moment, something flickered in her expression, recognition, maybe, or calculation. Then her smile sharpened. She raised her voice, projecting it toward me. Dad, maybe one day you'll trade that rusty pickup for something with a bit of shine. The words cut through the party noise. Conversations stuttered. Heads turned. I felt 20 pairs of eyes lock onto me, then swivel to look at my Ford F-150 parked at the far end of the drive. The truck's red paint had faded to a dull rust color over the years, and yes, there was actual rust around the wheel wells and along the bottom of the doors. A crack spider-webbed across the passenger side of the windshield. The tailgate had a dent from when I'd backed into a post at the hardware store 3 years ago. Laughter rippled through some of the guests. Not loud, but present. The kind of polite chuckling that people do at country clubs when someone makes a cutting remark and they're not sure if they should acknowledge it. A woman in a yellow sundress covered her mouth. A man in seersucker pants coughed into his fist, his shoulders shaking. My hands stopped shaking. The room, the lawn, tilted slightly. Not enough that anyone else would notice, but enough that I had to lock my knees to stay upright. Vanessa's smile stayed fixed in place, her diamond earrings throwing light across the grass like tiny accusations. Patrick had the grace to look uncomfortable. His hand paused on the Tesla's door handle. He glanced at me, then at Vanessa, then back at the car. But Trevor laughed, throwing his head back, showing all his teeth. Classic Dennis, Trevor said. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Always practical, right? Can't argue with a truck that runs. He said it like a consolation prize. The crowd's attention shifted back to the Tesla. Patrick opened the door, revealing cream leather seats and a massive touchscreen display. The interior smelled like new car and money. People crowded around to peek inside, their voices rising again with excitement. Someone asked about the charging time. Someone else wanted to know about the autopilot features. I picked up my water. The plastic cup crinkled in my grip. Bubbles still rose through the clear liquid, each one catching the light before bursting at the surface. The dessert table held 7 different types of cookies, 3 kinds of brownies, and something called a macaron that cost $4 each. I'd heard the caterer mention it while setting up. Vanessa had made that same truck ride to college 18 years ago. I'd packed the bed with her dorm furniture, a desk from IKEA that cost $200, a mini fridge I'd found on sale for $89, boxes of clothes and books and posters. She'd sat in the passenger seat, her feet on the dashboard, talking about her classes and her roommate and all her dreams. The radio had played country music. She'd sung along, off-key but happy. I'd paid for that college education, $47,000 per year for 4 years at the University of Kentucky. Room and board included, books and fees on top. I'd taken out loans, worked double shifts at the construction company where I was a project manager. Came home smelling like sawdust and drywall, my back aching, my hands rough with calluses. But every semester I'd made the payment on time, never missing one. She'd graduated summa cum laude. I'd been so proud, sitting in that auditorium watching her walk across the stage in her cap and gown. The tassel swung as she shook the dean's hand. She'd looked right at me from the stage, smiled, mouthed the words, Thank you, Dad. I'd taken 300 pictures on my phone. That girl was gone. The woman standing by the Tesla, laughing with Trevor and Patrick, her hand resting possessively on the car's roof. That was a stranger. Same face, same dark hair, but something fundamental had shifted. Maybe it had been gradual, so slow I hadn't noticed. Or maybe it had happened all at once when she'd met Trevor at some charity gala 3 years ago. Trevor Henderson. He'd swept into Vanessa's life like a hurricane. Smooth talker, expensive suits, connections throughout Lexington's business community. He worked as a vice president at Henderson and Partners, the consulting firm Patrick had founded. Vanessa had been immediately smitten. Within 6 months they were engaged. The wedding had been at the Lexington Country Club, 300 guests, a live band, flowers imported from Ecuador. Cost me $63,000. I drained my savings account to pay for it. Vanessa had insisted on everything being perfect: the dress, the venue, the photographer who charged $5,000 for 8 hours of work. I'd written each check with my hand cramping, watching my retirement fund evaporate. But she was my daughter, my only child. Her mother had died when Vanessa was 12, cancer taking her in 6 brutal months. It had been just the two of us for 18 years. I would have done anything for her. The party continued around me. Servers circulated with more champagne. The Tesla's doors opened and closed as guests took turns sitting in the driver's seat, posing for photos. Patrick kept shaking his head in amazement, his hand on Trevor's shoulder, thanking him over and over. The sun moved across the sky, shadows lengthening across the manicured lawn. I waited until the crowd thinned slightly. Patrick stood near the pool again, a glass of bourbon in his hand, talking with a group of men in polo shirts. I approached slowly, carrying my own drink. The ice had melted, diluting the water further. Patrick saw me coming and smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "Dennis, there you are. Hell of a party, isn't it?" I nodded, shook his hand. "Happy birthday, Patrick. You look well, feel well. 65 years old and they give me a Tesla." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Those kids of ours, they're something else." The other men drifted away, sensing a private conversation. Patrick gestured toward the lawn chairs by the pool. We sat, the cushions expensive memory foam that conformed to my back. The pool water reflected the blue sky, perfectly still. "I wanted to make a toast," I said, "to you, for everything you've built, everything you've accomplished." Patrick's smile widened. He raised his glass. I raised mine. The plastic cup looked ridiculous next to his crystal tumbler, but he didn't seem to notice or care. We clinked them together gently. "To 65 years, Patrick said. "And to family." "To family," I echoed. The bourbon smell from his glass mixed with the chlorine from the pool. Somewhere behind us, laughter erupted from a group near the dessert table. The caterers were bringing out the cake now, carrying it on a special cart. 65 candles plus one, just like I'd predicted. I started to speak. "Patrick, I wanted to say something about Dash." "Dennis, no boring speeches." Trevor's voice cut through the moment like a knife. He appeared from nowhere, moving fast, his hand landing heavy on my shoulder. His grip was firm, just shy of painful. Patrick looked up, surprised, his glass halfway to his lips. "Dad's the man of the hour," Trevor continued, his smile bright and empty. "No need for long toasts and reminiscing. Let's keep the energy up, right?" He squeezed my shoulder harder. I looked at his hand, then at his face. Trevor's expression was pleasant, friendly even, but his eyes were cold, calculating. He'd interrupted on purpose, I realized. Not because of time or energy, but because he wanted to remind me of the hierarchy. Patrick was the man of the hour. Trevor and Vanessa were the golden couple. I was just Dennis, the father with the rusty truck. Patrick shifted uncomfortably. "Trevor, Dennis was just Dash. Actually, Dad, we need you for the cake cutting. Caterers are ready." Trevor's hand left my shoulder. He gestured toward the tent where the massive cake waited, candles now lit and flickering in the breeze. "Can't do it without the birthday boy." Patrick stood, shooting me an apologetic look. Dennis, we'll catch up later, okay? Grab dinner sometime this week. I nodded, smiled. Sure, Patrick. Enjoy your cake. They walked away together, Trevor's arm around Patrick's shoulders, talking and laughing. I stayed in the lawn chair by the pool, watching as the crowd gathered around the cake. Someone started singing Happy Birthday. Voices joined in, off-key and enthusiastic. Camera phones lifted, recording the moment. Vanessa appeared beside the cake. She stood next to Trevor, her arm around his waist, her head tilted against his shoulder. When Patrick blew out the candles, she clapped the loudest, her diamond earrings throwing sparkles across the white tablecloth. The caterers cut the cake, placing slices on small plates. Guests lined up, laughing and chatting. I should have left then. The smart thing would have been to quietly slip away, drive my rusty Ford F-150 back to my small house on the other side of town. Forget about the humiliation. But something kept me in that chair. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe hope that Vanessa would remember who I was, what I'd done for her. Maybe just the inertia of disappointment. The party went on for another 2 hours. The sun moved lower, painting the sky orange and pink. The caterers brought out dinner filet mignon and grilled salmon, roasted vegetables and risotto that probably cost $40 a plate. I ate at a table in the corner, joined by people I didn't know who made polite conversation about the weather and local politics. The steak was perfectly cooked, medium rare like I preferred, but I couldn't taste it. My mouth felt full of cotton. Vanessa never looked my way again. She and Trevor circulated through the party, always at Patrick's side, basking in the reflected glory of their expensive gift. People congratulated them on their generosity. Someone asked where they'd gotten the Tesla, whether Patrick could get a discount through them. Trevor laughed, said something about connections and timing. Vanessa touched his arm, looked up at him with adoration. I left at 8:30. The party was winding down but still going. Some guests had moved inside Patrick's house, gathering in the living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows and leather furniture. I found Patrick by the bar, thanked him for having me, wished him well. He hugged me, that same warm embrace he always gave, said we'd definitely get that dinner soon. I smiled and nodded and knew it probably wouldn't happen. My truck started on the third try. The engine coughed, sputtered, then caught. I let it warm up for a minute before backing out of my spot near the service entrance. As I drove past the main house, I saw the black Tesla parked in the spotlight by the front door, positioned like a piece of art. People were still gathered around it, peering through the windows. The drive home took 20 minutes. Lexington streets were quiet on a Saturday night. Most people either out at parties or settled in for the evening. I passed the college campus where Vanessa had spent 4 years. The buildings were lit up, golden light spilling from windows. Students walked in groups, laughing and talking. I used to drive through here all the time when Vanessa was in school, picking her up for weekends or dropping off care packages. My house was dark. It was a small ranch-style place, 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, bought 30 years ago when my wife was pregnant with Vanessa. The mortgage had been paid off 15 years ago. The paint was fading and the roof needed replacing, but it was mine. I parked in the driveway, the truck ticking as the engine cooled. Inside, I poured myself a bourbon. The bottle was a cheap brand from the grocery store, $22 for a fifth. Nothing like what Patrick had been drinking, but it burned the same going down. I sat in my recliner, the one with the worn armrest where I always rested my hand. The living room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Vanessa's picture sat on the mantel. It was from her high school graduation 13 years ago. She wore her cap and gown, the blue fabric bright against the green grass behind her. Her smile was genuine, eyes sparkling with excitement about the future. I'd taken that photo myself on my old digital camera, made her pose for 20 shots until I got one where she wasn't blinking. That girl would have never humiliated me at a party. That girl would have never chosen a $22 bottle of shampoo for my birthday. 8 days later, Vanessa showed up at my door. I was in the kitchen making coffee when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw her BMW in the driveway, engine still running. Trevor sat in the passenger seat, looking at his phone. Vanessa stood on the porch holding a small bag. I opened the door. "Hey, Dad. Happy birthday." Her smile was bright, practiced. She dressed casually, jeans and a white blouse, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. The diamond earrings from Patrick's party sparkled in her ears. Behind her, Trevor honked the horn once, impatient. "Thanks for coming," I said. "Want to come in?" "Can't stay. Trevor's got a meeting." She thrust the bag toward me. "Here. Got you something." The bag was from Walgreens, white plastic with the red logo. Inside was a single bottle of shampoo. Suave brand. 2-in-1, shampoo and conditioner. The kind that came in a 22-ounce bottle and cost $3.49, though I saw the price sticker had been removed. I stood there holding it. Vanessa checked her phone. "Anyway, hope you like it. Thought you could use some good shampoo." She laughed, a sharp sound. "Dad, you don't deserve more than that." The words hung in the air. I looked up from the bottle. Vanessa's smile had changed, becoming something harder. Her eyes met mine for just a second before sliding away. Behind her, Trevor honked again, 2 short blasts. "Vanessa dash. Gotta run. See you soon, Dad." She turned and walked back to the BMW, her heels clicking on the concrete walkway. The car door slammed. Trevor pulled out of the driveway fast, tires squealing slightly. I watched them disappear down the street, the bottle of cheap shampoo still in my hand. The contrast was devastating. A Tesla Model S Plaid worth $137,000 for Patrick. A $3 bottle of shampoo for me. But it wasn't about the money, not really. It was about what it represented. Patrick was worth the best. I wasn't worth the effort of even wrapping a gift properly or spending more than 5 minutes choosing something. My hands trembled. I set the bottle on the kitchen counter, next to the coffee maker. The birthday card I'd hoped for wasn't in the bag. No note, no personal message. Just the shampoo with the price sticker carefully removed so I wouldn't know exactly how little she'd spent. I made my coffee. The routine was automatic: grind the beans, fill the filter, pour the water. The machine gurgled and hissed, filling the kitchen with the rich smell of brewing coffee. I'd planned to spend the day relaxing, maybe drive out to the lake, read the book I'd been working through. It was my 64th birthday. Not a milestone, but still. The phone rang twice that day. First call was Patrick, wishing me a happy birthday, asking again about that dinner. I told him I was busy this week, maybe next month. He said sure, absolutely, and I could hear the relief in his voice. He didn't want to have dinner with me any more than I wanted to sit across from him, pretending everything was fine. Second call was my neighbor Helen. She was 72, a widow who lived in the house next door. We'd been neighbors for 28 years, watched each other's houses during vacations, helped with yard work. She invited me over for birthday cake. I declined politely, said I was tired. She understood, told me there would be cake if I changed my mind. I spent my birthday alone. The bourbon came out again. 1 glass became 2, then 3. I sat in my recliner and thought about Vanessa, about how we'd gotten here. The memories played like a slideshow, teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, watching her dance recitals. She'd done ballet for 10 years, practicing every day in the basement where I'd set up mirrors and a bar. Those lessons cost $75 a week. I paid for them all, never missed one. Drove her to competitions in Louisville and Cincinnati, sat through hours of performances, recorded everything on my camcorder. When she was 17 and wanted to attend a prestigious summer dance intensive in New York, I'd worked double shifts for 3 months to afford the $4,000 tuition. She'd come home with blisters on her feet and joy in her eyes. That joy had died somewhere along the way. Or maybe it hadn't died, just redirected. Now it was aimed at Trevor and Patrick, at country club memberships and expensive cars. I'd become the embarrassment, the father with the rusty truck who gave boring toasts at parties. I finished the bourbon. The bottle was almost empty now, amber liquid sloshing at the bottom. My head felt light, detached. The living room spun slightly when I stood. I made my way to bed, collapsing on top of the covers, still fully dressed. Sleep came fast and dreamless. Revenge started with an accident. 3 days after my birthday, I was going through some old boxes in the basement. Cleaning, organizing, trying to keep busy. One box held financial documents from the past decade, tax returns, loan statements, investment records. I kept everything organized in folders, labeled by year. I found a folder labeled Vanessa College. Inside were all the loan documents from her education. The promissory notes, payment schedules, receipts. I'd paid off the last loan 2 years ago, making the final payment of $3,472. Total cost over 4 years had been $218,000, tuition, room, board, books, fees, everything. I sat on the basement floor, papers spread around me. The concrete was cold through my jeans. The overhead bulb cast harsh shadows. I picked up one receipt at a time, reading through them. Here was the payment for her freshman year dorm room. Here was the book fee for organic chemistry. Here was the meal plan that cost $6,000 per semester. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa. Dad, need to talk soon about Thanksgiving plans. Trevor's family or yours? I stared at the message. Trevor's family. Not mine, Trevor's. Like I'd been absorbed into their world. Become an appendage rather than her father. I set the phone down without responding. Picked up another receipt. This one was for her sophomore year tuition, paid in 2 installments. Something caught my eye. It was a bank statement mixed in with the college receipts. From 3 years ago, right after Vanessa and Trevor got married. I didn't remember putting it in this folder. Must have been misfiled. The statement showed a checking account I didn't recognize. Joint account. Vanessa's name and Trevor's. There were deposits I couldn't explain. Large ones. $15,000 here. $22,000 there. $35,000 3 months later. They came regularly every few weeks, always from the same source, Henderson and Partners, Patrick's consulting firm where Trevor worked. I studied the statement carefully. The deposits were labeled as consulting fees and project reimbursements. But something felt wrong. The amounts were too round, too regular. And there were so many of them. I counted 18 deposits over the 6-month period covered by this statement, totaling nearly $200,000. I went upstairs. My laptop was on the kitchen table, dusty from disuse. I booted it up, waiting for the ancient machine to wheeze to life. Once online, I logged into my email account and searched for anything from Patrick's company. There were a few emails, holiday party invitations, a thank you note from Patrick after I'd helped him move some furniture last year. Then I found something else. An email from 2 years ago, forwarded to me by mistake. The original sender was Patrick's accountant. The subject line read, Q2 Consulting Expenses, Review Needed. The email detailed several large payments to Henderson and Partners from Patrick's personal accounts, not the business accounts. Payments for consulting services Vanessa and Trevor supposedly provided. Market research, website redesign, business strategy consulting. I opened the attachments. They were invoices, professionally formatted with the Henderson and Partners logo at the top. Each one detailed specific services rendered. Comprehensive market analysis of Southeast regional competitors, $28,000. Complete website redesign and digital strategy overhaul, $43,000. Q4 business planning and strategic advisory, $31,000. The dates caught my attention. These invoices spanned 3 years, from right after Vanessa married Trevor until about 6 months ago. I added up the total. $165,000 in consulting fees, all paid from Patrick's personal accounts to Vanessa and Trevor's company. My hands started shaking again. I searched my email for more. Found another forwarded message, this one from Patrick's executive assistant. She'd sent it to me by accident, meant for someone else. It contained a spreadsheet tracking Patrick's business expenses. I downloaded it, opened it in Excel. The spreadsheet was detailed. Every expense categorized and dated. Travel, meals, gifts, charitable donations. And there, under consulting, were all the payments to Henderson and Partners. But what made my throat tight was the column labeled Status. Next to each consulting payment was a note. No deliverables received. Project canceled, payment not recovered. Awaiting final report, 18 months overdue. Service never rendered. I leaned back in my chair. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly. The coffee maker gurgled, starting its automatic cleaning cycle. Outside, a dog barked. Normal sounds from a normal day. But nothing felt normal anymore. Vanessa and Trevor had stolen from Patrick. The evidence was right here in these documents. They'd created fake consulting projects, billed Patrick personally instead of through the company, then pocketed the money without ever delivering any actual work. The invoices were professional, believable. Patrick probably paid them without question, trusting his son-in-law and daughter. $165,000. I sat there for an hour, reading through everything again, making notes, creating a timeline. The pattern was clear once you knew to look for it. The invoices always came at convenient times, right before holidays, just after major purchases. The amounts were always just below the threshold that might trigger extra scrutiny. And they were always labeled as ongoing projects that required months of work, making it easy to explain why deliverables weren't immediate. It was fraud. Sophisticated, deliberate fraud against Patrick Henderson, the man who'd welcomed Vanessa into his family, who'd trusted Trevor with a vice president position at his company, who'd just received a $137,000 Tesla for his birthday. My daughter was a thief. The realization settled over me like ice water. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was calculated, planned theft. Vanessa knew exactly what she was doing. So did Trevor. They'd been systematically draining money from Patrick for 3 years, hiding behind professional-looking invoices and corporate jargon. I thought about the Tesla, the shiny black paint, the cream leather interior, Patrick's joy as he ran his hand over the hood, Vanessa and Trevor's proud smiles as they presented it. Only the finest for Dad, Trevor had said. And it was fine, beautiful even. But it had been bought with stolen money. I thought about the $22 bottle of shampoo, the cheap plastic bottle with the price sticker removed. Vanessa's laugh as she handed it over. "You don't deserve more than that," she'd said. Her real father, the man who'd paid for her college and her wedding and her dreams, deserved a $3 bottle of Suave shampoo. But her father-in-law, the man they'd been stealing from, deserved a Tesla. My hands stopped shaking. The rage that had been building since Patrick's party, since Vanessa's cruel words at my doorstep, crystallized into something cold and clear. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about justice. Patrick deserved to know what his son-in-law and daughter-in-law had been doing. Vanessa deserved consequences for her actions. I needed evidence. The documents I had were a start, but I needed more. Proof that would be undeniable, that could be verified independently. I spent the rest of that evening on my laptop, pulling up bank statements, creating spreadsheets, organizing everything into a timeline. By midnight, I had a clear picture. 18 fake invoices over 3 years. Total theft of $165,000. Services promised but never delivered. Projects that existed only on paper. All of it carefully orchestrated to stay just under the radar of Patrick's accountants and lawyers. I saved everything to a flash drive, made 3 backup copies, put one in my safe deposit box at the bank, mailed one to myself in a sealed envelope, kept one hidden in my house. Then I erased the files from my laptop and cleared my browser history. If Vanessa or Trevor somehow found out I was investigating, I didn't want them to be able to destroy the evidence. The next morning, I called Rachel. Rachel Morrison had been a friend for 20 years, ever since we'd worked together on a construction project. She'd been a paralegal then, doing contract reviews. Now she ran her own law practice, specializing in civil litigation. We'd stayed in touch, had coffee every few months, helped each other with home repairs and legal questions. "Dennis, how are you? How was your birthday?" I didn't answer directly. "Rachel, I need your help. Legal help. This is serious." Her tone changed immediately. "What's going on? Can you meet me today? I'll bring coffee. There's something I need you to look at." We met at her office at 2 p.m. It was a small practice in downtown Lexington, just Rachel and an assistant. The waiting room had comfortable chairs and old magazines. Rachel came out to greet me, giving me a quick hug. She looked good. Her hair had gone gray, but she wore it well, and her business suit was crisp and professional. "Come back to my office." We sat across from each other at her desk. I pulled out the flash drive and my printed copies of the documents. Rachel listened without interrupting as I explained everything: Patrick's party, the Tesla, the shampoo, the financial documents I'd found. Her expression grew more serious with each detail. "Let me look at these." She spent 30 minutes reading through everything, making notes, cross-referencing dates. Finally, she looked up, her mouth set in a grim line. "Dennis, this is fraud. Clear-cut fraud." "I thought so. What do you want to do about it?" I'd been thinking about that question for 24 hours. There were options. I could go to Patrick directly, show him the evidence, let him decide how to handle it. I could go to the police, file a report, let the criminal justice system deal with it. Or I could hit Vanessa and Trevor where it would hurt most: their reputations, their careers, their comfortable life. "I want to file a lawsuit," I said, "against Vanessa. Defamation for what she said at the party. And I want to make sure Patrick knows what they've been doing." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Defamation is hard to prove. What she said was cruel, but it was an opinion, not a statement of fact. A judge might dismiss it. What if we add financial misconduct? Fraud. The fraud is against Patrick, not you. You're not the victim there. But I'm Vanessa's father. I have standing to sue for emotional distress, for the humiliation she caused me. And when it goes to court, all of this," I tapped the stack of documents, "becomes part of the public record." Rachel smiled slowly. "That's clever. You're not suing over the fraud directly, but the evidence of fraud becomes part of why her actions caused you such distress. It all comes out in discovery." "Exactly." She picked up a pen, started making notes. "We'd be filing in civil court, seeking damages for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The financial documents become evidence of character, showing a pattern of behavior. Patrick would likely be called as a witness. And once it's in court documents, Trevor's employer would see it." "Trevor's employer?" "He works at Henderson and Partners, right? Patrick's company. But Patrick's semi-retired. There are other partners, other executives. If they find out Trevor's been involved in fraud, even fraud against Patrick personally, they'll have to act. Corporate liability, fiduciary duty, all that. They'd fire him immediately." I thought about Trevor's proud smile, his Rolex watch catching the light, the way he'd clapped Patrick's shoulder, called him Dad, pretended to be the perfect son-in-law, all while stealing from him. "Do it," I said. "File the lawsuit." Rachel nodded. "I'll need a retainer. This won't be cheap, Dennis. We're talking months of work, maybe a year or more if it goes to trial." "How much?" "20,000 up front. Maybe another 30 over the course of the case. $50,000 total." It was most of my liquid savings. But I'd spent more than that on Vanessa's wedding. Spent double that on her education. This felt like a better investment. "Do it," I repeated. We spent another hour going over details. Rachel explained the process: drafting the complaint, filing with the court, serving Vanessa with the papers. Discovery would take months. We'd need to depose Vanessa and Trevor, get their testimony under oath. Patrick would definitely have to testify about the consulting payments. "This will destroy your relationship with Vanessa," Rachel said quietly. "You know that, right?" I looked at the documents spread across her desk. The invoices with their lies, the bank statements with their theft, the forwarded emails showing services never rendered. Vanessa had already destroyed our relationship. This was just making it official. "I know," I said. The lawsuit took 3 weeks to prepare. Rachel was thorough, drafting a comprehensive complaint that detailed every insult, every humiliation, every moment of emotional distress Vanessa had caused. The Tesla gift was in there. The shampoo was in there. The dismissive comments at the party, Trevor cutting off my toast, the way I'd been treated like an embarrassment. All of it documented and dated. Then came the financial evidence. Rachel attached all the documents as exhibits. The invoices, the bank statements, the emails. She framed it carefully. This wasn't about prosecuting fraud, but about showing Vanessa's character. A daughter who would steal from her father-in-law would certainly think nothing of humiliating her own father. The pattern of behavior was relevant to the emotional distress claim. We filed on a Wednesday. The courthouse was busy, people moving through the halls with folders and briefcases. Rachel submitted the paperwork, paid the filing fee, got our case number. Vanessa would be served within a week. Then the clock would start ticking on her response. "What do we do now?" I asked. "Now we wait," Rachel said, "and we get ready for the fallout." The fallout came fast. I spent that waiting week preparing in other ways. I made copies of all my documents, organized them into folders. I wrote a detailed letter to Patrick, explaining what I'd found, apologizing for the role my daughter had played in stealing from him. I didn't mail it yet. Rachel wanted to wait until after Vanessa was served, so she wouldn't have time to spin the story first. I also contacted Trevor's employer. Not Henderson and Partners, but the parent company that had acquired them 2 years ago. They were a national consulting firm based in Chicago. I wrote an anonymous email to their corporate compliance office, attaching all the evidence of fraud. No names, just the facts. An executive at their Lexington branch had been involved in fraudulent billing, stealing from family members while representing himself as a consultant. The email included dates and amounts, transaction records, proof. I sent it from a library computer using a temporary email address. Untraceable. Vanessa was served on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there to see it, but Rachel's process server sent a report. Vanessa had answered the door at her house, a modern glass and steel place in the expensive part of Lexington. She'd been wearing yoga pants and a designer tank top. The server handed her the documents, explained what they were, and left. Vanessa had stood there on the doorstep, reading through the pages, her face going pale. The server said she dropped the papers. Just let them fall right there on the concrete. Stood frozen for a full minute before Trevor came out to see what was wrong. They'd both read through the lawsuit together, right there in the driveway, neighbors probably watching. Then Vanessa had gone inside and Trevor had gathered up the papers. 30 minutes later, my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. Vanessa's voice came through, high and frantic. "Dad, what the hell is this? A lawsuit? Are you serious? Call me back right now." The next voicemail was angrier. "You're the only one who could have gone through our finances. This is illegal. I'm calling the police." I listened to each message once, then deleted them. The calls kept coming. 6 times that first day, 15 times the next day. I blocked her number after the 20th call. She started calling from Trevor's phone. I blocked that too. Then she called from a number I didn't recognize, probably a friend's phone. I started letting all calls go to voicemail, screening everything. The messages evolved. The anger faded into desperation. "Dad, please, whatever you're doing, stop it. You're tearing us apart." Her voice cracked. Trevor's bosses called him in for a meeting. They're asking questions about the consulting work. "Dad, please, we can fix this. Just drop the lawsuit and we'll talk." I didn't respond. On Thursday, Patrick called. "Dennis, I got your letter." His voice was quiet, subdued. "I need to see you. Can you come to my house?" We met that afternoon. Patrick's estate looked different in daylight without a party. The lawn was still immaculate, the pool still perfect. But the house felt emptier somehow. Patrick answered the door himself, no staff around. He looked tired, older than he had at his birthday party. "Come in. Want coffee?" "No thanks." We sat in his living room. The leather furniture was expensive, the kind that got more comfortable with age. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the back lawn where the party had been held. The white tent was gone now, the tables cleared away. Patrick held my letter. It was 3 pages, handwritten. I'd explained everything, how I'd found the documents by accident, what they showed, how long the theft had been going on. I'd included copies of all the invoices and bank statements. The evidence was undeniable. "I didn't know," Patrick said. All those consulting projects, I thought they were legitimate. Trevor always said they were working on strategy, planning, research. I trusted them. I'm sorry. You're sorry. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dennis, you didn't do this. They did. Your daughter and my son-in-law, they stole from me. $165,000 over 3 years. Jesus. I didn't say anything. Patrick stood, walked to the window. Outside, a gardener trimmed hedges. The sound of electric clippers faint through the glass. The Tesla, Patrick said. That beautiful Tesla they gave me. You know where the money came from now? Probably. They used my own money to buy me a present. How's that for irony? He turned back to face me. Dennis, thank you. For telling me. For sending this letter. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. We talked for another hour. Patrick told me he'd already called his lawyer, started the process of recovering the money. Civil suit, possibly criminal charges if the district attorney thought there was enough evidence. He'd also called the other partners at Henderson and Partners, informed them about Trevor's involvement. They'd put Trevor on immediate suspension pending an investigation. What about Vanessa? I asked. Patrick's expression hardened. She's family. Was family. But this changes everything, Dennis. I can't have people like that around me. Can't trust them. Can't look at her without thinking about those fake invoices. I understood completely. That night, Vanessa left another voicemail. Her voice was different now. Broken. Dad, Trevor lost his job. They fired him. The partners at Henderson and Partners, they called him in and just fired him. No severance, no references, nothing. And Patrick won't take our calls. We're trying to explain, but he won't listen. Dad, you have to stop this. Please. We made a mistake, we know that. But you're ruining us. The lawsuit, the gossip. Everyone in Lexington is talking about us. Please, Dad. I'm begging you. I saved that voicemail. Not out of sentiment, but because Rachel said it might be useful. It showed Vanessa understood the consequences of her actions. Showed she knew what she'd done was wrong. If we went to trial, that voicemail could be played for the jury. The gossip spread fast. Lexington was a small city in many ways. Everyone knew everyone, especially in the business community. Within a week, the story was everywhere. I heard about it at the grocery store, overheard conversations at the coffee shop. Did you hear about Trevor Henderson? Fired for fraud. Stole from his own family, they say. I kept my head down. Wore a baseball cap when I went out. Avoided places where I might run into people I knew. But one afternoon at the farmer's market, I couldn't avoid it. I was buying tomatoes when I heard 2 women talking behind me. Vanessa's in deep, one said. I heard she's being sued by her own father. Serves her right, the other replied. Always thought she was too good for everyone. Did you see her at Patrick's party? Showing off that Tesla like she was some kind of saint. With stolen money, apparently. They laughed, that sharp sound of schadenfreude. I paid for my tomatoes and left quickly, my face hot. The public humiliation was working. Vanessa and Trevor's perfect reputation was crumbling. The whispers and gossip were doing damage no lawsuit could match. 3 weeks after filing, I got a call from Rachel. Dennis, Vanessa's lawyer, contacted me. They want to settle. Settle? Drop the lawsuit in exchange for a formal apology and monetary compensation. They're offering $50,000. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No. Dennis, think about this. $50,000 is significant. And you'd get your apology. I don't want their money. I want them to face what they've done. Rachel was quiet for a moment. You know this could go to trial, right? That means months more of stress, legal fees, public scrutiny. Vanessa will fight back. She'll try to make you look bad. Let her try. All right then. I'll tell them no deal. The rejection seemed to break something in Vanessa. That night, she and Trevor showed up at my house. I saw them through the window, their BMW pulling into my driveway, both of them getting out slowly. They looked terrible. Vanessa's face was puffy, her eyes red. Trevor's suit was wrinkled, his usual polish gone. They walked to my door like people approaching an execution. I didn't let them in. They rang the doorbell 3 times. I stood in the kitchen, watching through the window as they waited on my porch. Finally, Trevor called out, "Dennis, please. We need to talk. Just give us 5 minutes." I opened the door but stayed in the doorway. They stood there, both trembling slightly. The evening light cast long shadows across the porch. Vanessa's voice cracked when she spoke. "Dad, we're sorry. We didn't know. Your money, everything." So Patrick had told them. During our meeting, he'd mentioned my investments, my careful saving over the years. I'd lived modestly, below my means, invested wisely. The house was paid off. I had no debt. My retirement accounts were healthy. I wasn't wealthy by Patrick's standards, but I was comfortable. More than comfortable. Vanessa had never known. I'd never told her. Why would I? Money wasn't something I talked about. But now she knew, and suddenly her behavior at Patrick's party, at my birthday, took on a different context. She'd mocked her father for being poor when he wasn't. "Can we just talk?" Vanessa continued. "Please, Dad. Inside." "No." Trevor's hands shook as he stepped forward. "We messed up, Dennis. We know that. The consulting work, the invoices. It was wrong. We were wrong. But let's fix this. Let's fix the family. We can make it right." "You can't fix this." Vanessa started crying. Real tears. Not the fake kind she'd used as a child to get what she wanted. These were messy, desperate tears. "Dad, I'm your daughter. I made mistakes. I said horrible things. But I'm still your daughter. Please don't do this." I looked at her carefully. This woman in designer jeans and a silk blouse, crying on my porch. I tried to see the little girl I'd raised. The one who'd loved dance class. The one who'd come running to me when she scraped her knee. The one who'd hugged me on graduation day and thanked me for everything. That girl was gone. "You stopped being my daughter when you chose lies," I said. The words came out calm, measured. "When you chose to steal from Patrick. When you chose to humiliate me in front of everyone. When you decided I was worth $3 at Walgreens. Dad dash. Face what you've done." I stepped back into the house. Fine, justice is done. I closed the door, cut off their apologies with the click of the latch. Through the window, I watched them stand there for another minute. Trevor put his arm around Vanessa's shoulders. She leaned into him, still crying. Finally, they turned and walked back to their BMW. The engine started. They pulled out of my driveway slowly, like people leaving a funeral. I waited until they were gone before going back inside. The house felt lighter somehow. The weight of years, of disappointment and anger and betrayal, lifted from my shoulders. I stood up for myself, said no, refused to be manipulated or guilt into forgiveness I didn't feel. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The fallout continued. Trevor's firing made the local business section. The headline read, "Local executive fired amid financial scandal." His corporate headshot looked out from the page, professional and smiling. The article was careful with its wording, citing unnamed sources and allegations, but the message was clear. Trevor Henderson had been terminated for misconduct involving fraudulent billing and family finances. No other company would hire him. I heard through the grapevine that he'd applied at 3 different firms. All turned him down. The scandal was too fresh, the accusations too serious. Even without criminal charges, the cloud of suspicion was enough. Trevor Henderson's career in consulting was over. Vanessa's social circle collapsed. Women who'd been her friends suddenly stopped returning calls. Lunch dates were canceled. Charity committees politely declined her continued participation. At the Lexington Country Club, people whispered behind their hands when she walked by. The isolation was complete and brutal. I heard about it all secondhand. Helen, my neighbor, kept me informed. She had friends throughout Lexington, women who played bridge and attended book clubs. They talked. Helen would stop by with gossip over coffee. "Vanessa tried to have lunch with Sarah Morrison yesterday," she'd say. "Sarah left after 10 minutes. Said she had a headache." Or, "Trevor and Vanessa went to the Henderson family dinner. Patrick's other son was there. He wouldn't speak to them. Just ignored them completely." The lawsuit moved forward. Discovery began, which meant depositions. Vanessa had to sit in a conference room with Rachel and a court reporter, answering questions under oath. Everything she said could be used against her at trial. Rachel grilled her for 6 hours, asking about Patrick's party, about the shampoo, about the consulting work. I wasn't there, but Rachel played me the tape later. Vanessa's voice was small, defeated. She admitted to the insults at the party, admitted to bringing the cheap shampoo as a birthday gift. When Rachel asked about the consulting invoices, Vanessa invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. That was damning in its own way. In a civil case, the jury could draw negative inferences from someone refusing to answer. Trevor's deposition went the same way. Fifth Amendment on every question about the money. Fifth Amendment about the fake invoices. Fifth Amendment about the services never rendered. But when Rachel asked about his feelings toward me, about why he'd cut off my toast at Patrick's party, Trevor couldn't help himself. Dennis is just... He's difficult, Trevor said on the recording. Always has been. Never could accept that Vanessa had moved on, built a life with someone else. He was jealous of our success. Rachel's voice came through calm and sharp. Jealous enough to fabricate evidence of fraud? I didn't say that. But you implied it. You're suggesting Dennis made up these invoices? Created fake bank statements? Trevor backpedaled. No, I'm just saying, look, Dennis has always been sensitive. The truck thing was a joke. Vanessa was joking. He overreacted. A $22 bottle of shampoo for his birthday. Was that a joke too? Silence on the tape. Then Trevor's lawyer cut in, suggesting a break. But the damage was done. Trevor had painted himself as dismissive, uncaring. The jury would hate him. For months after filing, we had a trial date. Rachel called me on a Tuesday morning. Judge Hardy's calendar opened up. We're set for October 15th. That gives us 4 months to prepare. What do we need to do? Prepare you to testify. Prepare our witnesses. Patrick agreed to testify about the fraud. We've got your neighbor Helen willing to talk about your character, about how Vanessa's actions affected you, and we've got all the documentary evidence. We spent those months preparing. I met with Rachel twice a week, practicing my testimony. She'd ask questions, I'd answer, and she'd critique my responses. Don't get angry, she'd say. Stay calm, factual. Let the evidence speak for itself. We went over every detail, the party, the Tesla, the shampoo, finding the documents, the phone calls from Vanessa. Patrick was deposed. He confirmed everything, the invoices, the payments, the fake consulting work. When asked if he'd received any deliverables from Vanessa and Trevor, he said no. When asked if he'd authorized the payments knowing the work wouldn't be completed, he said absolutely not. His testimony was devastating. Vanessa tried one more time to settle. 2 months before trial, her lawyer called Rachel with a new offer, $75,000 and a public apology. Rachel relayed the offer to me over coffee. What do you think? She asked. I thought about Vanessa standing on my porch, crying. Thought about Trevor's dismissive pat on my shoulder at the party. Thought about the $22 bottle of shampoo sitting on my kitchen counter, a monument to my daughter's contempt. No, I said. We go to trial. Rachel smiled. Good. I think we can win this. The trial started on a crisp October morning. The courthouse was busy, lawyers and clients streaming through the metal detectors. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for Vanessa's wedding. It was navy blue, slightly old-fashioned, but clean and pressed. Rachel met me at the entrance, carrying 2 briefcases full of documents. Ready? She asked. Ready. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling on the walls, fluorescent lights overhead. The judge's bench sat elevated at the front. 2 tables faced it, one for the plaintiff, one for the defendant. Behind them were rows of benches for spectators. A handful of people had come to watch, mostly local lawyers interested in the case. Patrick was there. He sat in the back row, his face neutral. He'd given his deposition but probably wouldn't be called to testify in person. The deposition video would be enough. When I caught his eye, he nodded once. No smile, but acknowledgement. Support in his way. Vanessa and Trevor arrived late. They rushed in 5 minutes before the judge was scheduled to appear, looking harried. Vanessa wore a conservative dress, navy blue like my suit. Her hair was pulled back, minimal makeup. Trevor wore a dark suit, his usual polish restored for the occasion. But there was tension in their movements, stress in the way they sat rigidly at the defense table. Their lawyer was Marcus Webb. He was good, expensive, experienced, known for defending difficult cases. Tall and silver-haired, he had the kind of gravitas that impressed juries. Rachel had warned me about him. "He'll try to make you look vindictive," she'd said. "Just stick to the facts." Judge Hardy entered. She was a woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and efficient. We all stood as she took her seat, then sat again at her direction. She reviewed the case file briefly, then looked up. "This is a civil action for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Mr. Morrison, you're representing the plaintiff." Rachel stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We're ready to proceed." "Mr. Webb." Marcus Webb stood. "Ready, Your Honor." "Very well. Opening statements." Rachel went first. She stood before the jury, 12 people from Lexington, ranging from a retired teacher to a construction worker. She explained the case simply, clearly. A father who'd sacrificed everything for his daughter. A daughter who'd humiliated him publicly, then added insult to injury with a thoughtless birthday gift. And underlying it all, a pattern of dishonest behavior that showed Vanessa's true character. "The defense will try to tell you this case is about a joke gone wrong," Rachel said. "They'll say Dennis is too sensitive, that he overreacted. But I'll show you evidence that proves otherwise. Evidence of theft, of fraud, of systematic lies. And I'll show you that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them." She sat down. Marcus Webb stood slowly. He buttoned his suit jacket, walked to the jury box. His voice was warm, sympathetic. "Ladies and gentlemen, families argue. They say things in the heat of the moment. Sometimes those things are hurtful. But does that justify a lawsuit? Does that justify trying to destroy your own daughter's reputation, her marriage, her life?" He painted me as vindictive, bitter, a father who couldn't accept that his daughter had grown up, married, built a life separate from him. The comment about my truck? Just a gentle tease, the kind families do. The shampoo? An admittedly thoughtless gift, but hardly malicious. "Dennis Morrison wants to punish his daughter for being successful," Webb said. "For marrying well. For having the life he thinks she shouldn't have. And he's willing to drag her through court, through public humiliation, to do it. That's what this case is really about." He sat down. Judge Hardy called for the first witness. Rachel stood. "The plaintiff calls Dennis Morrison." I walked to the witness stand. The clerk swore me in, and I sat down. The courtroom felt larger from this angle. The jury was closer, their faces attentive. Vanessa sat at the defense table, her eyes fixed on her hands. Trevor stared at me, his jaw tight. Rachel's questioning was methodical. She walked me through my relationship with Vanessa. The years of sacrifice, the college tuition, the wedding costs, specific numbers, dates, receipts, everything documented. Then she moved to Patrick's party. Asked me to describe what happened, how I felt. Vanessa said, "Dad, maybe one day you'll trade that rusty pickup for something with a bit of shine." I testified. She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, while presenting Patrick with a Tesla worth $137,000. "How did that make you feel?" "Small," I said. "Embarrassed. Like I didn't matter." Rachel showed the jury photos of my truck. The faded paint, the rust, the cracked windshield. Then she showed photos of the Tesla, sleek, expensive, perfect. The contrast was stark. "What happened at your birthday?" Rachel asked. I told them about the shampoo. The $22 bottle from Walgreens. Vanessa's words, "You don't deserve more than that." Rachel entered the actual bottle into evidence. Price sticker removed, but the cheap plastic obvious. She passed it to the jury. They handled it carefully, reading the label. Then we got to the financial documents. Rachel displayed them on a screen for the jury, the invoices, the bank statements, the emails. I explained how I'd found them, what they showed. The jury leaned forward, paying attention now. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about fraud. Marcus Webb's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to make me admit I'd been snooping through Vanessa's finances without permission. Tried to suggest I'd fabricated the documents out of spite. But I stuck to Rachel's coaching. Stayed calm. Answered factually. Mr. Morrison, isn't it true you've always been jealous of Trevor? No. Isn't it true you resented Vanessa's success? I'm proud of Vanessa's success. What I resent is her lying and stealing. Objection. Webb's voice rose. Move to strike. The witness is making unfounded accusations. Judge Hardy looked at me. Mr. Morrison, please confine your answers to the questions asked. Yes, Your Honor. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. The fraud was on their minds now, connected to everything else. Rachel called Helen next. My neighbor testified about knowing me for 28 years. About watching me raise Vanessa alone after my wife died. About the double shifts I'd worked, the sacrifices I'd made. Her voice quavered with emotion when she described seeing me after my birthday. How devastated I'd looked. Dennis is the kindest man I know, Helen said. He didn't deserve what Vanessa did to him. Webb tried to shake her on cross-examination, but Helen was unflappable. She'd seen what she'd seen, knew what she knew. The trial lasted 3 days. Rachel presented witness after witness. People who'd been at Patrick's party, who'd heard Vanessa's comments. The caterer who'd overheard conversations. Even Patrick's recorded deposition played for the jury. His voice filled the courtroom, explaining the fake invoices, the money never repaid. Vanessa took the stand on day 3. She looked small in the witness box, younger than her 31 years. Webb questioned her gently, letting her explain in her own words. Yes, she'd made the comment about the truck, but it was meant as a joke. Yes, the shampoo was a poor gift choice, but she'd been busy and didn't think about it. No, she never meant to hurt her father. I love my dad, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to move on with my life. Rachel's cross-examination was surgical. Ms. Morrison-Henderson, you testified that the comment about your father's truck was a joke. Did your father laugh? No, but did anyone laugh? Some people, yes. They laughed at your father's expense. At his truck, which you knew he couldn't afford to replace. Correct. I guess. Rachel pulled up a bank statement on the screen. This shows you and your husband have 3 cars. A BMW M5, a Mercedes SUV, and a Porsche. Combined value of approximately $300,000. Correct. Yes. But you gave your father a $3 bottle of shampoo for his birthday. Vanessa's face crumpled. It wasn't $3. It was $22. My apologies. $22. For the man who paid $218,000 for your education. Objection. Webb stood. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Hardy said. But again, the jury had heard it. Rachel moved to the financial documents. These invoices, Ms. Morrison-Henderson, they show payments to Henderson and Partners for consulting services. Services you and your husband were supposed to provide to Patrick Henderson. Did you provide those services? Vanessa invoked the Fifth Amendment. The jury's faces showed their reaction. Surprise, skepticism, judgment. Invoking the Fifth in a civil case looked like an admission of guilt. Webb tried to recover during redirect, but the damage was catastrophic. The closing arguments came on day 4. Rachel went first, summarizing everything. The years of sacrifice, the public humiliation, the cheap birthday gift. And underlying it all, the fraud. A daughter who would steal from her father-in-law wouldn't hesitate to hurt her own father. Dennis Morrison isn't asking for much, Rachel told the jury. He's asking for acknowledgement that what happened to him was wrong, that his daughter's actions caused real, genuine harm. And he's asking for damages to compensate for that harm. $63,000. The exact amount he spent on Vanessa's wedding. The wedding where she promised to love and honor her family. That promise was broken. Webb's closing was passionate. He painted Vanessa as a victim of her father's vindictiveness. He minimized the financial documents, calling them irrelevant to the emotional distress claim. He begged the jury to think about their own families, their own imperfect relationships. "Don't destroy this family," Webb pleaded. "Don't let Dennis Morrison use the court system to punish his daughter for living her own life. Families forgive. Families move on. Let this family heal." Judge Hardy instructed the jury. She explained the legal standards for defamation and emotional distress, explained how they should evaluate the evidence. Then she sent them to deliberate. We waited in a small conference room down the hall. Rachel checked her phone, made notes. I sat quietly, watching the clock. For hours passed. The jury was thorough, taking their time. Finally, the bailiff came to get us. "Jury's back." We filed back into the courtroom. Vanessa and Trevor were already there, looking pale. The jury entered, their faces neutral. Judge Hardy asked if they'd reached a verdict. "We have, Your Honor." The foreperson handed a paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. She read it silently, her expression unchanged. Then she handed it back to the foreperson. "On the count of defamation, how do you find?" "We find for the plaintiff." My breath caught. "On the count of intentional infliction of emotional distress, how do you find?" "We find for the plaintiff." "And what damages do you award?" $63,000 in compensatory damages, and $30,000 in punitive damages. $93,000 total. Vanessa made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Trevor put his arm around her. Judge Hardy thanked the jury, dismissed them, and set a schedule for post-trial motions. But I barely heard her. I just sat there, feeling the weight of 4 years of anger and betrayal finally settling into something like peace. The aftermath unfolded quickly. The local paper covered the verdict. "Father wins defamation case against daughter." The article was brief but factual, mentioning the financial fraud evidence that had been part of the trial. Within days, everyone in Lexington knew about it. Vanessa and Trevor moved away. They couldn't stay in Lexington after that. Too many people knew, too many whispers followed them. I heard through Helen that they'd sold their glass and steel house at a loss, packed up, and left for Nashville. A fresh start where no one knew their story. Patrick called me a week after the trial. "Dennis, I wanted to thank you again for exposing what they did. I know it cost you your relationship with Vanessa." "That relationship was already gone," I said. "Still, you did the right thing. And I wanted you to know, I recovered the money. My lawyers worked out a settlement with Trevor and Vanessa. They'll be paying me back over the next 10 years. Every penny." "Good. Are you doing okay?" "Really?" I thought about the question. Was I okay? I just sued my only daughter, exposed her crimes, driven her out of town. A year ago, that would have destroyed me. But now, I'm okay, I said, and I meant it. The money from the verdict came through 2 months later. $93,000, minus Rachel's fees and court costs. I ended up with about $68,000. I put most of it in a retirement account, saved some for that cabin in Vermont I'd been thinking about. Helen stopped by one afternoon with cookies. "Dennis, you're the talk of Lexington. Stood up to those two, didn't you? Always knew you had steel in you." I smiled. "Took me long enough to find it. Better late than never." "What are you going to do now?" I'd been thinking about that question a lot. What comes after revenge? After justice? After finally standing up for yourself? The answer came to me while I was packing that afternoon. "I'm taking a trip," I said. "Vermont. There's a cabin by a lake. Peace and quiet. You've earned it." That night I packed a suitcase. Clothes for a week, some books, my laptop. I put the suitcase in the bed of my Ford F-150. The same truck Vanessa had mocked. The same truck that had carried her furniture to college. The same truck that had been my faithful companion for 14 years. The engine started on the second try. I drove out of Lexington as the sun set. The colonial homes and green lawns rolled past, giving way to highways and farmland. The steering wheel was familiar in my hands, the seat worn to fit my body perfectly. The radio played country music, same station I'd always listened to. My phone buzzed. One last text from Vanessa. Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. I hope someday you can forgive me. I read it once, then put the phone away. Maybe someday I would forgive her. Maybe time and distance would soften the anger, heal the wounds. But that day wasn't today. Today was about moving forward, about finding peace, about reclaiming the life I'd spent so many years building for others. The Vermont border came up around midnight. I crossed it with the radio loud and the windows down, breathing in the cool autumn air. The cabin was still 2 hours away, but I wasn't in a hurry. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be except exactly where I was. The lake appeared through the trees around 2 a.m. Moonlight reflected off the still water, turning it silver. The cabin was small, just one room with a loft, but it had a porch facing the lake and windows that let in the dawn. I parked the truck, grabbed my suitcase, and unlocked the door. Inside, I made coffee. The cabin had an old percolator, the kind that bubbled and hissed on the stove. The smell filled the small space, mixing with the scent of pine from the trees outside. I poured a cup, added cream, and stepped onto the porch. The lake stretched out before me, peaceful and still. No parties, no humiliation, no fake smiles or stolen money or daughters who'd forgotten what I'd given them. Just water and sky and the kind of quiet that heals. My phone buzzed one more time. Trevor this time. Dennis, we know we can't fix what we broke, but we'll pay you back. Every penny from the verdict. We'll make it right. I deleted the message. They could pay back the money, could apologize for years, could rebuild their lives in Nashville or anywhere else. But some things couldn't be fixed. Some relationships, once broken, stayed broken. And that was okay. The sun rose over the lake, turning the sky pink and gold. I watched it from the porch, coffee warm in my hands. The weight of years finally lifted from my shoulders. I'd faced their betrayal and lies and come out whole. Free at last. If you liked this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments below.